I live in a house on the other side of CW, which is, there's not very many student housing options there. Most student housing that I know of is either off of Jamestown or Richmond Road, if it's kind of close to campus. But it's about a 5-minute drive from campus, or like a nice 10-minute bike ride through CW. The way I got housing is solely through my incredible roommate, Leo. If he was not there for me, then I would probably not be living anywhere. Every day for like all through the fall semester and into winter break, there's 3 or 4 sites where the vast majority of Williamsburg housing is posted, and he just was constantly refreshing it to find stuff. And then if there was something that fit into the price range we wanted, the distance range we wanted, then we tried to jump on it. And the way we ended up getting housing was during winter break, we found something we really liked. There were only a few openings to tour, so I took the Amtrak down from Nova in the morning, toured the house, made sure there weren't any red flags, and it was like in 15-minute cycles. Like there was another group of William Mary students right after me, and that night we signed the lease. So it was like a very, very quick process, but we really had to jump on it once we had it because there were other people who wanted it. So, yeah.
Okay, so I'm Ollie. Right now, I live past Target, so I live kind of farther away off of campus. It's like a 10-minute drive. But then last year, I lived in Midtown, so I've had 2 different experiences, I guess, with off-campus housing. Obviously, one of those being closer to campus. I guess Midtown is very popular, so that's kind of how I came upon that. We were kind of just stuck in that housing rush, and I was lucky to have roommates that I worked well with. We were in a suite already together, so we ended up signing a lease there. But then this year, I was looking for some place that was a little bit less expensive, and I didn't mind being farther away from campus. So I was mainly looking purposely farther off of campus, just at different apartment communities, because I knew it's typically a bit harder to find a house. So I was looking at those because I knew they would be a bit less expensive because they're not as targeted toward the student body. So I can answer any questions about that.
Hi. I found my house. I've lived in the same house now for 2 academic years, so this is my 2nd year living in that house. I live right off of Jamestown Road, so I found that house initially through word of mouth. I had a friend who lived there, and I knew that I really wanted to live in that house, so that involved reaching out to the person who was living there then. She reached out to her landlord and said, hey, I have tenants who are willing to fill this house again next year. And then that process started through the person who is currently living in that house. So I guess kind of like networking, I guess. But yeah, that's how I found my house. And then I re-signed that lease at the beginning of last academic year for this academic year.
Yeah, my tale is quite similar to Catherine's. I live in a house super close to the School of Ed, so right off Richmond Road. And all the people I lived with my sophomore year were all studying abroad. So I went out into the world to find my housing. And I was like, oh my goodness, where can just one person live? Or I was trying to find other people to live with. But it ended up ultimately being, I was a friend of a friend. They had a house that I live in now. They needed a 3rd housemate. So then I was like, oh, bet. I was like, you guys seem like nice people. And then we were all housemates together, and they were both seniors, so I lived with them last year, and then they graduated, but then I re-signed on the lease, so then I stayed there the following year as well.
So the next question is, do you guys have any advice to find housing? So, where to look besides, friends, or, if you can ask, how to ask friends, or any, websites that you guys particularly looked at?
Yeah, I would say kind of my best advice. I mean, the way I went on it was just talking to people and kind of asking what people knew of. I think word of mouth really helps here in terms of, because I think it's difficult in terms like if you're looking for a house maybe, you don't know if like juniors live there and like they're staying there or kind of like what the range is on like what's open. I think something that doesn't hurt is definitely like calling some of these like housing companies. I think is really great advice. Like I know I like have some friends that like they emailed and they for so long, but it wasn't until like, I know that's like kind of a cliche answer, but not until like genuinely they picked up the phone and was like able to talk to some of the housing companies that they were like really helpful. So I think that's definitely like a good place to start.
Yeah, I think I kind of just second what Lauren was saying. Things like this, talking to upperclassmen, is a really helpful way to sort of feel out the housing process, even if it's not like, hey, do you have a house I can live in? It's like, what was your housing experience like? Where do your friends live? Like, where do you know that students live off campus? That kind of thing. But also, yeah, I know there are websites that have housing like listings on them. I personally haven't used any of those, but I know that that is a popular option for a lot of students. I don't know if either of you can speak to that better than I can, but yeah, talking to people, asking questions, just feeling out all of the options before trying to pin down one thing.
Yeah, so I would say that really you just have to be proactive, like to a bit of an annoying amount. You really do have to like keep an eye on the websites because stuff is posted like every single day, and even at this time of the semester, like stuff gets posted pretty late, so you can snag that. But people will, especially for houses or just like rooms, I guess, people, students compete for those. So I think it's really good to, like they were saying, like pick up the phone and call like the person who's presenting the property, go see it. Also, like don't sign anything without going to like see it, like please, because some of it can be like really bad. But yeah, so I would say just trying to keep an eye on those if you don't have like contacts with people who live in houses, and also think about your willingness to live a bit farther off campus. It can be a little scary, I guess, to live farther off campus, and obviously like you don't have as much security. Like if you don't have a car, that can be difficult, but there's also a pretty robust public transport system, and most larger apartment complexes around the Williamsburg area have public transportation like stops nestled like within the community. So yeah, that's just also something to think about, like your own boundaries with how far you would be willing to move away from that sort of central location.
One thing I'd add to the great points that have been made already is that a number of houses close to campus are kind of unofficial clubhouses. So if you're a part of a club, make sure you're reaching out to the upperclassmen and seeing if there's like houses that people in the club have been living in for a few years, and it's kind of like it's given off every year to the next generation, because I know a number of people who have found their housing that way. Another thing is definitely solidify, who you want to live with relatively quickly. I know when we were searching kind of in the fall, it was unclear, okay, are we just the two of us? Are we trying to find a third person or a fourth person? And then once we kind of solidified, okay, we want 3 people, we know who the third person is, it became a lot easier to kind of search for specifically, 3-person leases. And the 2 people I'm living with are both in the same fraternity. Even though it's not a fraternity house, my roommate being in that fraternity helped him find those people that he felt comfortable living with, and then, he could kind of look for housing a little more easily. So those are just some things I'd add.
There's also a Facebook page called, I think it's William and Mary Housing and Subletting, and students will post opportunities to sublet a room in a house, maybe post a listing for like a room that is opening up for the next 9 months, 12 months, however long it is. It's just a good option to check out if you're looking for more like immediate or short-term housing, but there are also some longer-term housing options that you can find on that Facebook page. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, and when you ask upperclassmen, even if they've already passed down their lease, maybe their landlord has other properties, so get in touch with like their landlords as well. Okay. So the next question is, how much does off-campus housing cost? So kind of talk about like the price range, maybe if you live like further off campus, what does the price range look like versus like what the price range looks like closer to campus?
Sure. I mean, I don't know how comfortable people are sharing their exact leases. I'm comfortable. I pay $600 a month without utilities, and then with utilities, it's probably around $700. And I have a lot of space. I'm in the second floor of a house, far more than the amount of room I need as a college student for a bed, and I have a half bath, and that's all included. My roommates pay a little bit less than that, and that's because they don't have a half bath and they have a smaller room. But you can expect to pay about that much because we're further off campus. It's not where a lot of students live. Midtown, I think, is really expensive now. I think I have a friend who is paying they just upped it to $1,200 or something, and it's probably too late to get Midtown at this point in the semester already anyway, unfortunately. But I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons to each of those, but yeah.
Yeah, so I'll speak to Midtown first, I guess. So I was in a 4-bedroom in Midtown last year, and my rent was quite expensive. It ended up being, I think, a bit over $1,000 just for me. You do get your own bathroom, and it's quite nice. Obviously, it's a newer build. That being said, that was not sustainable for me, so that was my, driver in moving farther off campus. So I live in Steeplechase Apartments, which, like I said, is a bit past Target on Monticello. And there, it's just me and my partner, so we split the rent for a 1-bedroom. So I pay around $750 to $800 a month, depending on utilities. And that's been really nice. It's super spacious. It's a quieter community, I guess, because there's not a ton of students there, which I really enjoy. But yeah, utilities aren't included. At least not all of them are. I think Midtown is one of the rare places that does include their utilities in their rent, which can be a plus. But yeah, typically I think the farther you go out, the less your rent can be, and especially in some of those houses like what you were talking about. I toured a lot of houses where the rent was similar to that, in the, $500, $700 range for a few bedroom house. It just kind of depends on where you look, and a lot of those do get put on those websites a bit later in the semester.
I think in my experience, the houses that are closer to campus generally do tend to be a bit more expensive. It also might be a little bit different if you're looking at a house versus an apartment. So I know Midtown has a set price. Griffin Arms Apartments also has a similar price to Midtown. But that, again, is much closer to campus. In terms of, the street that I live on, I think it also depends on the size of the house that you're living in and, not the amenities of the house, but my house has a separate standalone garage. It has a yard, and we also have a shed space. So that also ups the cost of rent a little bit. And even staying in the same house, I've seen my rent increase over the time that I've been living there. It increased from the person who was living there before me to when I lived there for the first year, and it also raised between the 2 years that I've lived there. So that also is going to happen. I think it's happening all over Williamsburg, unfortunately. So if you're looking to live close to campus, you should be prepared to pay a little bit more per month, I think. So yeah, I can't speak to certain numbers for certain streets, but it likely will be a little bit more.
Catherine and I, our situations are kind of similar. But yeah, no, kind of similar. My house, I would say I lived there last year, and last year I paid $550 for rent, and this year I pay $650, and then that is about it, maybe $100 extra for utilities, but that's all stuff that we have to do that the landlord, we have to set up our gas, our water, our energy, our Wi-Fi. There's one other I'm missing, but so it's power. Yes, I can't forget my power.
Gas, water, Wi-Fi. Power, gas, water, and Wi-Fi. But our two houses are managed by the same company, so that will change landlord to landlord. Some landlords I know cover the water bill for their tenants and not the rest, or some landlords I know cover all of utilities. It just depends on the property manager and the landlord.
Yeah, no, that's really all I have to say about that.
Sorry.
Okay, so the next question. So the next question is, how do you guys get to campus, or potentially talking about alternative ways to get campus if you don't have a car?
So I was driving to campus, but yesterday I took it to the shop and they said I shouldn't drive it. I have a big problem with my car, so I'm biking to campus now. That's just what happens sometimes. You have to, play with the cards you have, and that's why being a little bit, if you have a car that's reliable, it's great, but obviously a lot of people don't have that option. As Olive said, there is a decent public transportation system, but that's also something you can't always rely on. So I'm kind of at the furthest distance I think people would generally be comfortable biking to campus. It's about a 10-15 minute bike ride through CW, and even then, if it's raining or something, I'll probably, or if it's snowing or it's bad, I'll have to ask one of my roommates to drive me. So also, parking on campus is pretty rough. I'm a humanities student, so I'm always in the Sunken Gardens, but the closest, parking for students on campus is the parking deck or Kaplan. So if you're a STEM student, that's great, or a business school student, that's great. So just keep that in mind. Also, don't park on Richmond Road for longer than 2 hours because you will get a ticket.
I'm parked there right now, and I'm freaked out. Because, does it matter after 5?
Some parking spots it's $15.
Well, I didn't look, but I have a timer set on my phone because they will literally ticket you a minute over 2 hours. But anyway, okay, so when I was in Midtown, I did not have a functioning car, which is not that big of a deal because Midtown is quite close. That being said, I was on and off campus a lot because of just different responsibilities, whatever. I like to go home and lay down intermittently. So I was I would make the trek to lay down in the middle of the day. But something that I feel students don't really know about or talk about that much is a carpool parking pass. Y'all, they're so good. So I lived with my 2 really close friends and then my partner last year in the 4-bedroom. And myself and my partner's schedule ended up being similar. So I was oh my gosh, you have a car, let's get a carpool pass. So you just split the cost, and the parking spots, they're placed throughout campus. So there's some in that little parking lot right by Sadler. There used to be some in the Yates lot. They're on that first level in the parking deck, so you pretty much always have parking, which is so nice. So if you don't have a vehicle but you're going to be living with somebody that does, and maybe you are willing to work with that person to figure out, oh, you have class at 9, I have class at 11, but I'll come with you to campus and just get some work done, and that's something that you think you could work with, I would highly recommend doing that. I do have a car now, which is really nice, but like I said, the public transportation system is reliable for those hours during, I guess, the typical school day. And I know people who get rides from their friends that live in their same apartment complex. So
I think in my case, I'm fortunate to live close enough to campus that I walk every day. It's about a 10-minute walk from my house to the Sunken Gardens, so that's my primary mode of transit. I have a car this year for the first time. I didn't have one last year, and that's been really helpful in terms of like getting to the grocery store or like I want to go to cookout, like that kind of thing. But yeah, last year I didn't have a car, so I was walking all the time, and that was not a problem for me.
Following in our theme, I also live in walking distance. But I do sometimes drive to campus. Big fan of the 2-hour parking on Richmond Road, so watch out. But yeah, I'm fortunate. I'm about a 15-minute walk. I'm a little bit past Richmond Hall, so like it's just kind of a little trek down Richmond Road for me. And then I'm the only person in my house who has a car, so sometimes like if I am driving for campus, I do pile everyone in the back of my car and we go find our spots down Richmond Road.
Also, if you have friends who have cars and you have a love off campus and you don't have a car, like they can drive you to the grocery store. Just be like, hey, when are you going to Trader Joe's? Can I come with? It's an easy way to do that. So not having a car is an okay thing, depending on where you live.
And the last question I have is like, do any of you guys have experience with like furniture rentals, or do you guys think it's better to get an apartment or house that's like fully furnished?
So my house did not come furnished, which was a surprise to my parents after I'd signed the lease. They were a little upset about that. But furnishing it can be pretty difficult. I was lucky that me and my roommate, during the summer, we came to campus early and we were able to, drive to Habitat for Humanity, get a $60 couch, and really we were on top of like furnishing the whole house as quickly as possible. But it's also it takes a lot of responsibility. Like there's a lot of walls in my room which are still just empty because I just haven't had the time to put anything up. But I do have a bed. You don't need much more than that. But I would highly recommend trying to get something that's furnished because it just takes away a ton of hassle.
Okay, this is like, I guess, up to preference. Like, I love having a little decorating moment. So, like, it's been super fun to live in a space that I can actually, like, touch without being fined. But, I mean, being in Midtown was nice. Like, it's, like, a hassle trying to get furniture. Like, I live in North Carolina, so that, like, drive up with, like, all of this, like, stuff packed in my car was, like, not great. But, I mean, I think it's just preference. Like, it was really nice living in Midtown, but I also really like having my own stuff. We just, like, scavenged, like, the streets like over the summer, like really. And also just like I was like, hey mom, she was like, I'm not paying for your furniture. I was like, okay. I was like, can you ask your friends if they have old stuff? So I just took all my mom's friends' stuff that they didn't want, and then it ended up happening. And then we got a $50 couch from this law school student. And she came and she dropped it off in her minivan and she carried it up 3 flights of stairs, which was insanely impressive and a wonderful experience. So you never know like who you'll meet when you're finding the cheapest furniture possible. Yeah.
Just want to add that Habitat for Humanity doesn't do its own delivering. It's great. You should definitely go there. They restock Friday mornings, so you need to go there Friday or Saturday to get the good stuff. But definitely if your parents or a friend has like a minivan or a pickup truck, like bring that down because you're going to have to pay extra for delivery.
Okay, Lauren.
Do you want to go first? You can go. Okay. I'll make it quick so Lauren can talk. But my house also wasn't furnished, but I spent a lot of time on the William and Mary People Selling Their Furniture Facebook group. Plugging the Facebook groups again. There's one for clothes, there's one for textbooks, there's one for furniture. But that one I was able to find some cheap stuff on. It's a lot of people who are graduating who are selling their furniture. This is also true if you have friends who are seniors who are graduating. You can reach out to them and be like, hey, can I buy your bed? And maybe they'll say yes. That's how I got my bed. But my house also is an organizational house, so there was stuff in it when I got there, much to my landlord's dismay. We were gifted a couch, which we will now have to do something with at the end of this year, but like we have a couch, we had some utensils in the kitchen, we had stuff like that. So yeah, see what you can inherit from your friends who are graduating.
This is true. That's probably like, okay, well, I'm going to say my piece about the Restore first. I love the Restore. I love the Habitat for Humanity Restore. It is so cheap, and it is so fun to, like, explore and, like, be able to find things that, like, you want to put in your home and, like, add stuff with your personality. And I think the William & Mary community is, like, as a whole, in terms of, like, upperclassmen who have cars or just, like, are really, really willing and, like, to, like, help you transport things. Not to, I'm looking at Sydney because I got Sydney a new table because hers broke from the Restore, and we drove down Richmond Road with her hanging, with like her holding it out the back. I don't endorse that, but it is, it's definitely it's a possibility for sure. But it's so like that's definitely like a really like a great way, like financially being able to like furnish your house for sure. I also think, kind of echoing what everyone else has said, like come graduation, if like anyone is like staying that long, I think people are really, really willing to they want to get rid of their stuff. Like I got a couch for free, like this nice little couch, and they're like, if you can move it, you can have it. And we also put that in the back of my car. But like people are so willing, or like I was at like, I'm sorry, I'm just going to use Sydney as all my examples. Like, Sydney's, like, neighbors were moving out. And, like, I needed it. And they're like, do you need this dresser? And, like, Sydney's like, I don't need a dresser, but Lauren does. So, like, I put the dresser in my back of my car, and now it's my dresser. And then I got a nightstand, too. So, like, the theme of scavenging and just, like, people are just so willing. And, like, they also just, like, want to get rid of their stuff. Like, they don't want to take it with them post-grad. And, like, they will, like, give it to you really, really cheap. So, like, and for free, even. So, like, it's just so, like, I don't know, kind of that open communication and just like talking to people, I think is like people are your best resource when it comes to the housing in terms of like furniture as well. But I will plug the Restore all day too, just to want to make that clear.
Okay, so we're gonna open it up to audience questions, but before we do, I just want to preface that we have created, so student assemblies, college rights, and College Policy and Student Rights Department has created an off-campus housing resources, and I've also, in the class 26, has also added to that resource. So we will be sending that out after this session, and it contains some like a listserv, like the Facebook pages that you guys mentioned, also some like other rental websites and other information. So just keep that in mind as you guys formulate your questions. But we're going to open it up. So if anyone has any questions, raise your hand, and Matt or Spencer will go around and hand you a microphone. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? And if anyone's leaving right now, if you guys want to join, so I've created a William & Mary Housing GroupMe, and we'll also be sending that resource document in there as well. So you can look it up in GroupMe. Okay, any questions? Okay. Do you want to?
I was going to ask if y'all had heard of any places that y'all would recommend avoiding, or any sort of areas and things like that that didn't work out for people.
Okay, that's my turn.
So this isn't necessarily an area, but so the company that operated my house for a while, they control a lot of the property in Williamsburg, and they are very inflexible. Particularly my landlord, my old landlord, she's not my landlord anymore, but she lied to us all the time. She's your landlord, right? Yeah. Oh. So, yeah, she like explicitly lied to us a bunch of times. Tried to change the terms of our lease in the middle of our lease, And then we were like, hey, no, that's literally like, you can't do that. And she was like, well, Virginia law. And we we're like, where in Virginia law? And then she ghosted us. And then we got charged for something. It was a whole situation. She also like tried to kick us out of our house for no reason. And she wasn't fantastic. I don't feel like I should share her name, but is it fine? Can I share her name? She's scary. I don't want her to find me. Okay, yeah. So my experience living in a house managed by Angela Bailey was not a pleasant one. She scares me, and she told us verbatim that she wanted to have a monopoly on all of the housing in Williamsburg. So that's my, forewarning.
I never had any. I feel like we're calling it. Yeah, as my property manager, I think so. She managed the property, the landlord of my landlord, and my landlord, he was chill. He does no harm. He doesn't really do much, so he's kind of chilling. I don't know. He's Bob's fine.
Living in Midtown is interesting. It's a popular spot, so it's really not like bad. Like that doesn't really happen. But I would be mindful if you're interested in living in Midtown, which it might be a bit late for that unless you're looking to sublet like a room or something. Expensive, a lot, and a lot expensive. In like loophole ways, so like they'll probably send you over like a sample lease and you'll be like, oh cute, and then they'll be like, you're living on the 5th floor, so that's $65 extra a month for each of you, and also you have big windows, so that's $25 extra a month, and those charges can kind of add up. And also just things like maintenance and stuff, it's just something that you kind of want to be mindful of depending on like, I guess like how you feel about cracks in your walls and stuff. But yeah, I would, the place I live right now, love it. I think just mainly like it's important to like talk to people that have lived there before if you can. Like if you end up like being able to take on the lease of a house, maybe be like, hey, what was your experience like with this landlord? Or if you're wanting to move into an apartment complex, Google reviews, but also, take it with a grain of salt because people that leave Google reviews are often a little bit upset about something or other, maybe a little testy. But yeah, and tour the place. Like we toured some places, like you might see like on the William and Mary like housing Facebook or on like the little website, like there will be places that are like really appealing, like $750 a month, like 1 or 2 bedrooms, and it's like maybe like an attachment onto a house, but then you go and you tour and there's like mold everywhere and it was abandoned, and that's why it's really cheap. So you do want to like be sure that like you're protecting your health. Like we live in like a historic area. Like there are some really old houses, frankly, and like you just kind of have to be careful of that and just make sure you're living in like a safe area, especially if you do end up looking farther off of campus. Like look at the reviews and like look for indicators of like it not being like as secure of like an area, and that's up to personal judgment, but yeah.
Since I'm seeing people leave, I'm just gonna make a couple of like announcements / like information stuff. So first thing is just to answer some other general questions we've gotten. You'll know Thursday, February 15th, if you have been accepted for housing or been put on the wait list. So that's one of the questions we've gotten. Also, some advice from Res Life to you guys. Don't panic right now. Many properties won't be listed until the spring, like they've said. So while we encourage you guys to start looking now and looking potentially like further off campus, don't panic. Campus Living will also be providing 2 to 3 housing fairs, one later this semester. Actually, it's going to be on November 29th, and one early next semester, so you guys can go to those as well. Residence Life is willing to be a resource at any point along this journey, so feel free to reach out to them. And they're also anticipating being ready to share more information soon regarding additional resources to assist in your guys' search. Lots of people have also asked about a board that's not Facebook for people looking for roommates or housing, or like a listserv. So that's why we created the William Mary Housing GroupMe, and then we'll be sending the off-campus housing resources that Student Assembly's college policy and student rights department has created in conjunction with the Class 26. But I'll be handing it off to Spencer with more questions.
So this is unrelated to anything we've talked about, but it's something that I'm dealing with in my house right now. If you are looking to live in a house versus an apartment, be prepared to deal with some things that you may not deal with in an apartment, but you would in a house. So specifically, my example, rats. That apparently is something that happens according to our pest control guy, to houses around the campus of William and Mary. It doesn't happen in every place, by all means, but those are some things that you could deal with that may not happen in an apartment, but do happen in a house. So there are many perks to living in a house versus an apartment, but there are also some downsides. There's give and take, yeah.
Yes, love apartments because pest control and maintenance, like you don't have to deal with that stuff. Like that's people's jobs. So that's really nice because that's like a logistical thing you don't have to deal with. Also, one thing I would add is that if you're looking for like apartments that are like farther off of campus, like Steeplechase, you can get on a wait list, which I would highly recommend doing at like this time of the year, and that doesn't really require much on your part. You're just like, okay, I'm gonna like apply and get on a wait list for this floor plan, which is, I didn't know you could do that. So yeah, okay.
Hi, so I'm thinking about studying abroad spring semester of my junior year. Do you have any recommendations about where to find like 6-month leases or if those exist in Williamsburg at all?
There's a lot of people in your situation who are already juniors and seniors who have leases, so a lot of the stuff on the Facebook group of the subletting group is people in your exact situation or on the other end of your exact situation that are looking for someone like you. So.
Yay, yeah, subletting is like scary to think about, but also like it usually ends up being like a pretty solid situation. Like I had 2 of my really close friends last year, like they studied abroad for a semester and then like they ended up subletting last minute and it was like totally fine. It was with a group of people that they never would have really like, I guess, spoken to, but like they're perfectly nice students, just like, in a different social circle. So it can be a good opportunity to meet new people, and there are a ton of subletting like opportunities on the William and Mary Housing group. So yeah.
I think like specifically in my situation, one of my housemates is going abroad for the spring semester of her junior year. So she's having someone sublet her room for the spring semester. You can, kind of like husband said, you can be on either side of that. You can sign a year-long lease and sublet for that semester, or you can look to sublet for the fall semester from someone who's maybe going abroad in the fall and has a year-long lease. So.
And you can I think a lot of houses also do sublet, so you can get really close to campus just by someone needing to give a room. So you can be really surprised with the sublet housing market for sure.
However, Midtown does not allow subletting, and I know that because someone I know was subletting and then had to call in to Midtown because something wasn't working a few days into the lease, and their name wasn't on the lease, and they were kicked out. So be careful.
Sorry, I know I'm talking a lot. On that note, there are a lot of houses in Williamsburg that have 3-person leases, but more than 3 people live there. They just aren't on the lease. So that does happen. So if you have a group of 4 people and you have a house that has 3 bedrooms, but it's a 3-person lease, that does happen. So, yeah.
Any other questions from the crowd? Yes.
For those of you with cars, depending on how often you use it, like how much does that add to your expenses, like including maintenance and gas, and like if you have a campus parking spot, like decal or whatever it is?
Okay, so when I was in Midtown, this is also such an important housing consideration. My parking now at my apartment is free, which is so nice and the way it should be everywhere. But at Midtown, they raised it. It's like multiple $100s for your Midtown parking spot. Then if you get a campus decal, that's another multiple $100s. So like you're like probably over like $600 at that point, just with those two things. So that's something to think about. Yes. Well, I think for like I think that would be like for the whole year. But so that's an important housing consideration. I drive every day. But I'm also not driving like anywhere else, so it doesn't really add up for me that much. Also love my car. She's fuel efficient. So that's like another thing, I guess. But I don't even get gas like every week. It's just like a few miles like there and back, so it doesn't really add up to much. But I think the main, I guess, cost thing is on-campus parking, which is why I brought up the carpool pass, because I feel like that's such a good option that is kind of tucked away. So like you can also do an option where you just get a decal for like one semester. Like this semester, I only have like my decal for fall because I wanted to wait and see what my spring semester looked like so that I could have the option of getting a carpool pass next semester instead of like spending the whole amount ahead of time. So that's like a bit of a cost, but since I have free parking at my complex, I was willing to incur that.
Sorry, I feel bad that I'm saying so much, but my parking is actually, so it's relatively inexpensive in terms of like car stuff for me, because I walk 95% of the time. I probably get gas like every 3.5 weeks to a month. My car is also pretty fuel efficient, and I don't drive that much. I only pretty much drive to the grocery store and stuff. So pretty low in terms of that, but also my parking pass for my house, it cost me $5 to buy the decal. I just had to go to the city office and show them my lease and my government ID, and they were like, okay, that'll be $5. Here's your sticker. And so that's like zoned for my street. So I can park on my street and like, because I have that decal. They will ticket you if you're parked in a decal zone without a decal.
Yeah, the only extra thing, and then you can get like little guest passes if you do live off like in a similar area to Catherine. You would get like, it's like $5 extra, and you just like hang it, and so your friends don't have to get ticketed if they park at your house. So also you could be really nice to someone and let them park at your house, and then give them the little decal that cost you $5 so they don't get a ticket.
And a lot of the houses off campus have driveways. So if you don't want to pay for a parking decal, you can park in the driveway.
Yeah, so I'm the only person at my house with a car, and I don't have a decal because I just park in my driveway.
My car is not fuel efficient, and it also is not reliable. So it really depends on the car. I don't know where you're at in terms of if you have a car, but the car market is really, really difficult, really expensive right now. It has been for a few years. I guess knowing what I know now, I would recommend spending more on an initial investment of a car, but that means it's more reliable in the long term, lower, you're paying less for fuel, kind of thing. But it also is a personal decision on how much you want to risk. So, but yeah, it's a few $100s for, and I think it's like $300 for a parking pass on campus, and it might be a little extra for depending on where you live for for a parking pass.
Also, parking on campus is just rough. Like, I know we talked about this, but it's genuinely something to really think about because it changes the entire schedule of your day. Like, it's a shift moving off campus. Like, even if you're relatively close, like if you live in Midtown but you drive, like, you gotta leave. Like, if you have class at like 10 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like, you're not getting a spot in the parking deck. So you just have to be like, okay, I'm parking in Kaplan, and then maybe you're walking from Kaplan like across Sunken. So that's just also something to factor in if you're somebody that's like, no, I like to roll out 10 minutes before class. Prob not the best situation for you.
Any other questions from the crowd? Does anyone else have any other questions? Oh.
Hi. Are there any underrated areas or hidden gems that you can recommend?
I mean, it really truly depends on where you're, like how far off campus you're comfortable being. I would say where I live, like right off of Page Street, is really nice because Page Street's it's a big road. Once you cross it, you're on the other side of CW, other side of, like, it doesn't feel as very close to campus, and so the rates kind of drop a bit, but it really isn't that far. It's very bikeable, so that area is nice, and there's a lot less students out there too, but it's not really much further than Midtown really to anywhere, to most places on campus. Well, I guess to the kind of to the east side of campus. But yeah, it's really dependent. Like, I would just think long and hard with yourself. Like, okay, will I have a car? If I don't have a car, am I willing to bike 15 minutes? Or do I really need to like walk? Am I someone who's not going to be up for class, an hour before? And so I need to be somewhere closer. Like, it's a very personal decision.
Yeah, I would say like the areas down Monticello, like if you go past the School of Ed, past that little intersection and just get a little bit off campus, there are multiple like apartment communities there. Some are more expensive than others. Like there's like Newtown High Street. Yes, High Street. Thank you. And those are really nice. So maybe you're like, okay, like I won't spend on gas or a car and I'll live in one of these areas that's like kind of nearer to school on Monticello, which is right by those really big biking like and walking trails, which can be like a totally feasible option. That would be like a 15-minute bike ride maybe to get onto campus. So I feel like that's also a really nice area, and it's also so convenient. You can walk to get groceries, like you're right by like Trader Joe's, Fresh Market, Target, like all of those areas. So I love where I live. It's really nice. I feel like it's more accessible than people think by like alternate modes of transportation. Okay.
Okay, this is general, but like if you want to live off campus, be willing to put the work in to find off-campus housing. Sometimes it falls in your lap, but the odds of that are fewer and further between than having to actually like refresh those websites, keep up with that Facebook page, like whatever it requires, be willing to make that happen for yourself.
You have to hound people as well. Like I live in a relatively like well-established and well-managed community, and I was on the wait list for like 9 to 10 months, I think. Like I got on the wait list for this year, I think maybe in like September, October of last year. And you kind of have to like continue making those calls like every few months to keep on their radar just because it's so high demand. So that's also something to keep in mind because I did not know you had to do that and very nearly did not have housing because sometimes they just like lose track and like they'll post a bedroom like up on the website and like people can snag it, apply for it online. Even if it's like a well-managed community, it's just important to like keep your name in there.
All right, so unless we have any other questions, we're going to end right now. Thank you guys all so much for coming, and thank you to our panelists for taking the time out of your guys' day to give some amazing advice. We'll also be putting a recording of this on, sharing it via the class email as well. So if you want to like look over it or tell your friends, we'll be sharing that as well, along with the resource document. So thank you guys all so much for coming. I know we have some people who are looking for roommates, so if you guys want to like talk to each other too, like I bet people here are looking for roommates, looking for housing. So yeah, thank you guys all so much.